Hello, I'm Dan Heber, and this is the lecture video to accompany the readings on Aristotle. And we're looking at Aristotle in the context of the question, what is the meaning of life? And so you might find it odd that we're in chapter 9, which is the chapter on morality, but Aristotle connects those two things. Aristotle is going to say that the meaningful life is in fact the virtuous life. And so that brings up this question of, like, well, what is virtue? How can we discover virtue? And then how can we become virtuous ourselves? And all of those questions for Aristotle are related to this topic of the meaning of life, because Aristotle is going to say that there is a specific kind of life that you should be living, that human beings have a purpose, that we have a function, and the meaningful life is the life that is lived in accordance with our function. So with those prefatory comments out of the way, you'll notice that our reading assignment begins on page 505. I'm going to be sort of scrolling down here until we get to this excerpt from Aristotle's major work, the Nicomachean Ethics. And we remember from our discussion of Aristotle earlier in the course, we talked about Aristotle's concept of entelechy, this notion that everything has a purpose. We're going to be revisiting that at the end of the course now. So let me just go ahead and read this first line here. As all knowledge and moral purpose aspires to some good, as all knowledge and moral purpose aspires to some good, what is in our view the good at which political science aims, and what is the highest of all practical goods? So that line right there, all knowledge aspires to some good, that's this notion of telos, end or goal or purpose, that we had talked about earlier. This notion of entelechy, this notion that everything, the idea that everything is directed to the attainment of some end. Earlier in the semester, we talked about an acorn, and we talked about what Aristotle said about the acorn. It's like, well, the purpose of an acorn is to become an oak tree. And how do we know that? Well, out of all the things that I've ever observed growing, right, there's only one thing that I've observed being planted and coming up an oak tree, and that is an acorn. So how do I know what the purpose of an acorn is? Well, I observe it, right? I don't know what the purpose of an acorn is because I rubbed my chin and contemplated the form of acornness. So we know about the purpose of things through what we observe. So now we're going to be connecting that to the meaning of life. What Aristotle is going to say, that there is a type of life that you are supposed to live. It is the life that is consistent with your function, what you're supposed to be doing. And perhaps you know some people, perhaps you might even have some friends that sit around and complain about how nothing ever works out for them. Oh, woe is me, life is terrible, things didn't work out again. And more often than not, the same people that make those complaints are the people that just do nothing but make horrible decisions all the time. And what you're tempted to say to the friend is like, well, of course you're not happy, right? Of course you're not satisfied with life, because all you do is make these horrible mistakes and bad decisions. How else is it going to work out, right? If you want life to work out well, then you make good decisions. But now here's how Aristotle enters virtue into it. The right decision, the good decision, the virtuous decision, that's what we're supposed to be living, right? We're not just supposed to be miserable all the time. Sometimes we are miserable. But that's not what we all want. We all want to live this flourishing life. And Aristotle's point is that you can't stumble ass backwards into a flourishing life. To flourish as an individual, you can't just live life any old way. You can't just make any old kind of decisions. You've got to live life a very specific kind of way. You've got to make specific kind of decisions. And the decisions and the actions and the choices that you're supposed to be making are those choices that are consistent with human purpose. So just as there's something that an acorn is supposed to do to become an oak tree, Aristotle's going to say there's a certain thing that you are supposed to do. You're supposed to live virtuously. You're supposed to do the things that are consistent with your purpose. So, this notion of purpose, what is it that we're doing? What we're all after is happiness. Again, nobody wakes up and says to themselves, I wonder what I could do, today to make myself more miserable. Now notice that you might actually do something and end up miserable as a result of it, but that's never your goal, right? Our goal is to be happy. Nobody wants misery. We end up miserable. That wasn't our plan, that wasn't what we wanted, or it wasn't our goal. Our goal was something else. And so what Aristotle's going to say is that we all human beings have the same goal, happiness, except for Aristotle was Greek. He didn't use the word happiness. He used the word eudaimonia. And the word eudaimonia is poorly translated as happiness. A better translation would be something like a flourishing soul, right? Because a flourishing soul, that's what we want. Now, happiness is going to be a component of a flourishing soul, but notice that just because you have a smile on your face doesn't mean that your soul is flourishing, right? You ride a roller coaster or Silver Dollar City, it's going to put a smile on your face, but your soul doesn't flourish because you ride a roller coaster, right? You might be eating a banana split from Andy's frozen custard. It's delicious. It puts a smile on your face, but your soul doesn't flourish because you're eating ice cream, right? Your soul flourishes as a result of a particular kind of life, a life well lived. And what is the well lived life? It is the life that is lived in accordance with human function. And so it's not just acting any old way, it's acting one specific kind of way. And you can't just do that once in a while, right? Aristotle adds this proviso: in a complete life. Telling the truth once doesn't make you an honest person. Telling the truth even every once in a while still doesn't make you an honest person. You're an honest person only if you are engaged in the characteristic activity of truth-telling, right? That and that alone is what constitutes an honest person. And what Aristotle's going to point out is that liars, cads, scoundrels, and rogues, they don't have a tendency to do all that well in life, right? Promotions pass them up. They have these horrible relationships. And what Aristotle is going to say is, well, we all want to be happy. We all want our souls to flourish. We all want to experience eudaimonia. But if I go through life being a scoundrel and a scoundrel and a cad, well, that's probably not going to work out all that well for me. So I ought to make different kinds of choices. Those choices that are consistent with human purpose. And what is our purpose? We all want to experience flourishing. So just to read this blue passage in its entirety, if we define the function of man as a kind of life, right, a specific kind of life, not just living life any old way, a specific kind of life. And this life is an activity of the soul. Notice that emphasis on activity. You can't just sit around and have a flourishing soul. Having a flourishing soul comes from you being engaged in life, and not being engaged in life any old way, one specific way, the way that is consistent with human purpose, which Aristotle says there's that one purpose. Just as an acorn has one purpose, human beings also have a purpose. So the function of a good man is the activity of an action of a good and noble kind. And if everything is successfully performed, when it is performed in accordance with its proper excellence, it follows that the good of man is an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue. The Greek word virtue, well, the English word virtue is a translation from the Greek word arete, which means perfection. It's a perfection of the soul, according to Aristotle. It's a perfection of character. There's certain things that the good person isn't going to do, and there's things that the good person is going to do. And so what do we mean by the good person? Well, the good person is the person who behaves virtuously, right? Doing what you are supposed to do. That's what's going to lead you to a flourishing life, not any kind of life. But again, you have to do it consistently. Just because you didn't cheat on your partner yesterday, that doesn't make you a faithful person, right? You're only a faithful person if you're continuing every day. You make that choice. You do those actions that the faithful person would do. Just because you told the truth yesterday, that doesn't make you an honest person, right? You've got to be continuing to be engaged in the act of truth telling. Then and only then can you be said to be a truth teller. So there's this terminology that we covered at the very beginning of the semester in accordance with our discussion of Aristotle. There's that word eudaimonia, a flourishing soul. Last thing I'll read here from the reading assignment for today. This first green highlighted passage. Actions in accordance with virtue are not, for example, justly or temperately performed because they are themselves just or temperate. It is necessary that the agent at the time of performing them should satisfy certain conditions. That is, in the first place, that he should know what he is doing. Secondly, that he should do them deliberately for their own sake. And thirdly, that they should be an instance of a settled and immutable moral state. So you're not honest just because you tell the truth. You tell the truth the way the honest person would tell the truth, right? Think of music as a corollary. It's not enough just to, I'll use the example of playing the piano, not just to hit certain keys, right? You can, whenever you're in the process of learning the piano, there's somebody else telling you which keys to press and when to press them and how long to hold the keys down. So you're not pressing the keys that way because you know what you're doing. You're pressing the keys that way because someone else who knows what they're doing is telling you to press the keys that way. So how do you come to be the person who knows how to play the piano? Well, you got to play the piano, right? And you can't play the piano any old way and be considered a good piano player. You've got to play the piano a specific kind of way. That's how you become the good piano player, right? So it's emphasis on action, and it's emphasis on actions that are in accordance with the virtue, which is perfection. And this second highlighted passage here. Accordingly, deeds are said to be just and temperate when they are such as the just or temperate person would do. And a just or temperate person is not merely one who does those deeds, but one who does them in the spirit of the just and temperate, right? So again, as I've said before, just because you tell the truth, that doesn't mean that you're a truth teller, because you've got to tell the truth the way that an honest person would tell the truth. You got to tell the truth at the right time, in the right way, with the right intention, with the right purpose. All of those things have to be coming together before you can be said to be a truth teller. Now, the takeaway here. Aristotle thinks that there is definitely a specific kind of life that you should be living, and that there are certain actions that you should be doing that are consistent with the idea of a human purpose. In the next video, I'm going to be talking to you about Albert Camus, a guy that wholeheartedly disagrees with just about everything Aristotle had to say on this topic. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to a close. I'm going to ask you to enjoy the rest of the day, and I'll be in contact with you. Well, actually, I'll see you in the next video.